What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. For those of you that are new, my name is Hart, and today I'll be breaking down this 11-game NBA slate here on DraftKings for Friday night. Just talking through my favorite plays, doing a game-by-game breakdown, favorite value plays, as well as an early look lineup build for tomorrow night. As always, there's always a ton of injury news. You really shouldn't make a lineup until about 30 minutes before lock when you start getting the news. That's when you can start building it. So, as always, make sure to stay up to date with the injury news, hit that like button, and subscribe. And let's get right into this breakdown. As always, if you guys want a more in-depth breakdown, a whole write-up, slate, write-up, you can find that in my Patreon link down below, where I go over my updated core plays as well. A lot of people tend to like it, so that'll be out tomorrow morning, hopefully by like 2 o'clock for you guys, so you guys can kind of digest that early, and then I can update it once we get the injury news closer to lock. But for tonight, it's a two-game slate. Right now, not cashing. I'm about like 12-ish. I had 10 or 12 points out of cash. I still have a ton of minutes remaining. You got Clay, Wiggins, Paul, Williams, and Kaminga there all left. So I mean, I should be able to cash. I don't think it'll be anything too crazy here, but yeah, should be able to cash and get my money back at least. But yeah, one with Lowry, that was very disappointing. Very, very low owned. He did not play the last 90 minutes of the game there. Clay Thompson just doing terrible right now, but still doesn't really matter because he's 51% owned. Wiggins, surprising he's not a little bit higher owned, but yeah, I mean, he's doing okay. Bridges did fine, not too bad, not too, good there. Claxton was absolutely smashing, on pace to go for 40, 45 plus. Did not play the last 8 minutes of the game. They benched him for Trenton Watford, even though Claxton was the second leading scorer on the team. Makes no sense. Chris Paul doing average. Jalen Williams not shooting the best, but still doing decent. And then Kaminga is doing very, very solid there. I had Looney switch to Kaminga just because I thought, Kaminga probably has a little bit more upside there in terms of offensive ability. But Kaminga is doing Looney is doing very well as well. So, yeah, that is the slate, or that's the lineup I went with for tonight. Jumping into this 11-game slate here. Going to be a pretty quick breakdown. Going to try to have more of like my more of my breakdown on my Patreon link down below. But we'll go through each and every team, kind of the normal stuff here. But 11-game slate. First game we have here is the Bucks and the Hornets here. 8-point spread, 234.5 game total. Absolutely love targeting the Hornets. They're a very, very bad defensive team. Knicks, Wizards, another option here. Wizards are a terrible defensive team. So two great matchups to start the slate tomorrow. 227.5 game total, 6.5 point spread. Kings, Spurs, another one. It looks very, very juicy tomorrow for the slate. I'm expecting a lot of high scores, probably maybe sneaks into the 400 fantasy point range. But Kings, Spurs, 6.5 point spread, 235.5. 76ers, Hawks, 1 point spread, 235.5. Pistons, Cavs, 8.5 point spread, 221.5. Celtics, Raptors, nothing right now because I think they're still waiting on the injury news there with Brown and Porzingis. But a 5.5 point spread, that'll probably change depending on that news. So slight blowout risk there. Magic Bulls, 260.5 game total, very, very gross. Nuggets, Pelicans, 224.5. Suns, Jazz, 236.5. So that's a very, very good one there as well. Lakers, Blazers, Lakers, Blazers, 222.5. Rockets, Clippers, 217.5. So like 4 to 5 really, really good games here to target. And the rest more so kind of contrarian options for tonight. So diving into the first game here, we have the Knicks, we have Washington. Obviously for the Knicks, the big news here is RJ Barrett. With him being out the past 2 games, Josh Hart has moved in the starting lineup. And as you can see, pretty solid. Not going to shoot the ball a ton, but he can stuff the stat sheet. So once again, if he does start, because there's no Barrett, Josh Hart is still a pretty solid mid-range play. Quickly becomes a little bit more viable off the bench there. Does have a pretty solid upside if you can hit his shots. Should see mid-20s minutes. And then obviously Brunson and Randall would look, really, really good at their price tags. Randall does feel a little bit too pricey. Brunson always score independent, but with no Barrett, they should play heavy minutes and get the whole offense to themselves. So that's kind of the breakdown for them. Obviously, if Barrett's back, I don't have a ton of interest in this team here. Evans is more so secondary options. Robinson always offers GPP upside, but he's just all over the place in terms of his production. And that's really it there for the Knicks. Hartenstein's always a GPP option there if you want a cheaper value center. On the Washington side, obviously the offense goes through Kuzma right now. It's pretty much him. Poole has not been great. I mean, one of these games he's going to explode. I just don't know when, because this dude has not been great at all. Been very, very foul prone the past 4 games as well. So I know one of these games he's going to pop off. I just don't know when. So he's just a decent secondary option for me right now. Denny, fine if you land on him. One of those guys that can stuff the stat sheet. Nothing too crazy there. Tyus Jones, the minutes are just all over the place. Like if he was playing 30, 35 minutes, I'd really like him at 5,700, but it's just, you just can't trust the minutes with him right now. I have a good amount of interest in Gafford. With Mitchell Robinson on the other side, Gafford should probably see close to 30 minutes there. Stays out of foul trouble. One of those guys who can easily go for a double double, get a few blocks and steals. So good amount of interest in Gafford for me right now, even though he's very, very foul prone. Bilal is getting a ton of minutes right now. He's doing very well defensively. So I think he's a decent option there, 4,800. Wright is out, so they'll throw minutes to Kispert, Shamit. I guess you can take a dart throw on him if you really wanted to, but he's super score independent. Gallinari's seen about 20-ish minutes, a cheap value as well there, but nothing too crazy. Moving on to Milwaukee here, fantastic matchup against Charlotte. Obviously, the big news right now is Giannis. If he's out, obviously we're going to want to take a shot on one or two of the Bucks guys at least. Dame would be a fantastic spend up coming off a great game there with no Giannis. Bobby Portis and Brook Lopez would both look really, really good there. Bobby had 31. Brook, I think, had close to, he had 42 and a half. Still hasn't shot the ball a ton, but still huge upside there. Middleton's still on a minutes limit, so no interest in him. Beasley had a fantastic game there. Obviously, you can't expect him to shoot 78% from the field, but he does have some upside, close to that if he does hit the shots and get some peripheral stats there. So he still looks decent. I still would have interest in, Pat Connaughton off the bench there. Just didn't really shoot. He's not really shooting right now. But yeah, he's one of those guys who can definitely go for 20 plus fantasy points. So I still think he's a decent option there if you're looking for a cheap value play. Jackson did get the start, but he only played 16 minutes, did nothing there. Obviously, if Giannis is back, it's really just the two up the top for me. Bobby and Brook are okay, secondary options for GPPs, but nothing too crazy there. Moving on to Charlotte here, obviously a pretty tough matchup, even though the Bucks have not been great defensively. Charlotte's just been bad offensively. LaMelo Ball looks like a contrarian spin up option. I mean, he's been fantastic recently. It's just, can this game stay close? It would help if Gordon Hayward is back, but he's questionable. If he's out, once again, they'll probably start LaMelo Ball, PJ, Mark Williams. Miles Bridges is back. So this is big news here, because if he's not on minutes limit, I'd absolutely love him at the price. Probably going to be super rusty. Wouldn't be surprised if he goes 2 of 15, but he should be super aggressive. He was a very, very productive player before he got suspended or was injured. I don't even know, but I think it was suspended. But yeah, very, very productive player. So he looks really, really good right now, depending on if there's minutes limit or not. So I'm going to throw him in for right now, but keep an eye on this, because that's huge news, because that's way too cheap for how high his production can be in this spot here. But yeah, he probably gets to start alongside PJ Washington, LaMelo, Mark Williams. I'm assuming they'll throw in either Theo Maledon or Brandon Miller, depending on if Brandon Miller is good to go. If he is, I think he's a fine option there. Obviously, if Gordon Hayward's back, he'll move back in the starting lineup alongside LaMelo, Gordon, PJ, Mark Williams, and probably Miles Bridges. So a good amount of news here. Kind of want to wait to see what happens here, because there's a lot of different scenarios we can kind of go over there. But for Boston here versus Toronto, once again, love the price tag of Tatum, especially if there's no Brown or Porzingis. But if both those guys are back, I still really like Tatum. Brown and Porzingis to be strong secondary options. Same thing with Holiday. I'd still have a good amount of interest in White there. Pretty solid game there, 7 to 12, 41 fantasy points. Guy that can stuff the stat sheet. And then Horford has a monster game as well. He should be good to go. No interest in him if there is Porzingis. Now, if there is not Porzingis, I think Horford is a very interesting play there. Hauser did start 35 minutes, but did absolutely nothing because he's very score independent. And then Pritchard, he would be a very cheap value play down there. Didn't do the best, but did see 23 minutes that you can definitely land on if there is no Porzingis and Brown once again. Moving on to Toronto here. I mean, Scotty Barnes, we know what he's going to do. Probably go out there and put up a 50 bomb. So he's a really, really strong spend up option. Very safe. Don't love the price tag on Pascal here. Very up and down. Would rather get to Scotty Barnes for $600 more. Dennis Schroeder does have that double upside. He was questionable going into that last game. Just wasn't the best for him. Kind of 3 down games in a row for him. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a bounce back spot here for him going against Boston, but not the best matchup going against Drew Holiday and Derek White. OG's questionable. Looks like he's doubtful. So once again, they'll probably start one of these random wings. I think they started, I forget who they started last game, but it looks like it should probably be Gary Trent Jr. So if that happens, no minutes limit. Really, really like Gary Trent Jr. there as a cheap value. Very score independent, but 4,700. He gets a start. He should probably see 25 plus minutes. I'd have a good amount of interest in him. And then Boucher, Precious off the bench there. They'd both be, decent options. Precious minutes went down, but so did his price tag. And then Boucher, very productive there as well. So good amount of interest in those two, wings, or excuse me, those two, centered slash forwards, as well as Gary Trent there if there is no minutes limit and if he's starting there for OG. Moving on to Philadelphia here. Embiid should be good to go, but he is questionable, so keep an eye out on that. But against Atlanta here, absolutely fantastic matchup. Love Embiid. Maxey, same thing. Finally priced about right, 9,100. Kind of had a letdown game there, only 30 fantasy points, but still very, very strong play here against Trae Young and DeJounte Murray. Tobias looks pretty appealing here, 6,300. Doesn't really have a huge ceiling right now, playing alongside Embiid and Maxey, but he's been super consistent and steady. So I think it's a strong option there if you do land on him in the mid range. Melton's playing a little bit better there, shooting the ball a little bit more with no Oubre. So he's interesting. Covington did get started, got the start 2 games ago against Indiana. 16 minutes, 6 fantasy points. Got the start again. 37 against Boston. In a tough matchup, goes for 27.5. It's just frustrating stuff there. 4,500. I think he's an okay value play if he starts once again, if there is no Batum. But if Batum's back, which he's not, he's ruled out, I think Covington's just an okay play. It just pisses me off when you see that. And then Reed will get minutes off the bench, same with Beverly, but nothing too crazy there. For Atlanta, Trae Young looks like a solid contrarian spend up. DeJounte a little bit too pricey for me, but does have some upside. Really like Jalen Johnson. Not as productive the past 3 games as he was, at the beginning of the season, but still has huge upside. So really like him. Minutes are pretty safe right now. Bogdan, too pricey for me. Coming off a monster game there, but still not a lot of interest for me at 6K for Bogdan coming off the bench there. Minutes have been good recently, but it's more so Trey did miss, I think, 2 games there. So that definitely helped out. But yeah, I just don't love the price tag for Bogdan there. Capella, same thing. I'm not going to see 30 minutes. Tough matchup for him. Hunter, kind of a GPP dart throw play, does have some upside, but has a very low floor. Then Okongwu, could see some more run there if there's in foul trouble for Capella guarding Embiid. And I do have some interest in Sadiq Bey. Should see mid-20s minutes, and he's been very aggressive off the bench. Moving on to the Kings here versus Spurs. Sabonis looks fantastic as a spend up. He's just been really good this season so far. I really like Fox. He was great for me that last game, almost a 50 bomb there, 4 steals, another fantastic matchup. Not really sure who's going to guard Fox, so should be absolutely Swiss cheese there for Fox. Wouldn't be surprised if he has a monster game there. I think Keegan Murray is an interesting mid-range play. Playing alongside Sabonis and Fox does lower his ceiling a little bit, but still should see 35 minutes. Should still shoot the ball close to 15 times. If he hits his shots, he can definitely go off. So interest in him. Don't love the price tag here on Herter, even though he's coming off a monster game there against the Lakers. But right now, don't love the price tag there with him. Monk, price tag is getting interesting. Now he's becoming like a GPP dart throw play. And that's really it for the Kings here. They did price up McGee, backup center, should get around 10-ish minutes. If there's foul trouble, obviously a little bit more. For the Spurs, Victor's priced about right. Don't love that. Conan Johnson is questionable, but he should be good to go. With him back, the offense will go through him. Vassell is out, so that is definitely news here to keep an eye on to see who starts for him. I'm assuming it's going to be Victor, Keldon, Zach, Sohan, and then we'll see if they start Champagne again here, and Champagne, whatever his name is. Obviously, he got very lucky there with 7 stocks, but still, he was very aggressive alongside the starters. So if he starts again, I still think he's a very solid value play. He had terrible night shooting, but made up for it with the stocks. Trey Jones is questionable. It looks like he's doubtful. So they're going to be down a good amount of guards. So it should be more minutes for a guy like Sohan as a ball handler. Same thing with Keldon Johnson. I think it makes him very strong mid-range play. Zach Collins does have some upside there, so I have interest in him. And obviously really like Branham, Osman, and Champagne here. Whoever starts, probably Champagne once again, but Osman and Seti and Branham should see good minutes off the bench there with no Vassell and probably no Trey Jones. So keep an eye on the starting news here because there's a lot to like. And that's really it's Bassey with some minutes. Devontae could be a sneaky value play here. 3,400 did see some minutes there, 17, and with both those guards down, could definitely take a shot on Graham here Graham here is a nice value piece. Moving on to Detroit, we have Cade at the top. It just pisses me off. 4-14 that last game. I played him. 4% owned, 9 points. It's like, come on, man. But very, very cheap price tag for a guy that should see 35 plus minutes. Does have double-double upside. Should shoot the ball 20 times, and he averages 22.5 points per game. So I really like Cade here once again, 7,900. You got to throw the past performances out of the window for a guy that has this much usage, this much minutes, and this many shot attempts. So really, really like Cade here. I think he's a strong play. Thompson's just been, rock solid here. I don't. I think I played him once so far this season. It's just one of those things like he's been priced about right for me. I haven't gone on my way to play him, but he's been very, very good. So I don't mind him. Duran is out, so Bagley should probably get the start here, but he is questionable. So we have to keep an eye on this news because if he's out, they could probably start James Wiseman at 3,300, which his minutes probably wouldn't be safe and secure, but he should hopefully see 20 because they really have no other bigs here. So they could potentially play small, but Cleveland has a ton of size there with Mobley and Allen. So I do think they would really need Wiseman. So that's huge news to keep an eye on with this Duran news here and this Bagley news. And then obviously Stewart should play a ton of minutes here. Really, really like him, 5,600, because they'll need his size. So a lot to like here for the Pistons. Cunningham, Stewart right now for me. I think Hayes is a fine play there. Has had some upside recently. Stats are priced about right. Burks still have a good amount of interest for me. He's been super, super productive. But they do have a bunch of their guards back, and they should all play around 20 to mid 20s minutes. So no one really stands out too much to me. Knox played 29 minutes, playing a good amount of minutes recently. So he looks like a fine value. But yeah, huge news there with the Bagley news that he is questionable. On to Cleveland here. For the Cleveland side, honestly, Donovan Mitchell is questionable. Huge news there because he's been the best on the team so far. Garland is questionable as well. So a lot of news in this game here that could really change the slate and could be one of those situations where, Bagley gets ruled out, Mitchell and Garland get ruled out, and we're going to load up pretty much on this game because there will be a lot of options, a lot of cheap options to get to. So a lot of news here. Gonna have to wait for the news here because if one or two of these guys are out, we're gonna want to load up on Levert and Strus at least, and then probably get to a guy like Mobley who should really step up offensively. So a lot to kind of wait for. Thankfully, it's one of the first 5-6 games here, so we should get the news hopefully before the start of the first game. If not, we'll get it within the first 15 minutes of that second game, or the second few games that will start. So we'll have it. I'd say build your lineup around the fact that we gotta wait for that news because it does change the whole slate. Moving on to Orlando here versus Chicago, rematch from the other night. Both teams were absolutely god awful. I don't even know if they had 50 points at half each. They both really struggled, but big news here is Fultz is out once again, so it definitely makes Franz and Paolo very, very viable. The offense will run through both of them. Window's out once again, so we'll get Goga and Mo Wagner splitting the center minutes. I think they're both fine options. Goga did see more run there, 26 minutes, went for a double-double. Very, very foul prone, as you can see, 4 and 5 the past 2 games, but I mean, if they're going to give him a few more minutes, I do have interest in Goga against, against Vooch. Only 20 minutes from Mo, but still, I think they're both pretty solid plays. Still have a good amount of interest in Cole Anthony. Kind of cooled off recently, but nice bounce back there with almost, 30 points in 22 minutes. That's kind of what he can do. So he's definitely viable with Fultz being out. Same thing with Suggs, 25 points, 2 of 8. Just hasn't been the best shooting the ball, but it's been making up peripheral stat wise. So I have a good amount of interest in Orlando right now. They do feel a little bit too cheap for this matchup. Isaac should excuse me, should see about 17-ish minutes. I think Black got the start again, but just really hasn't been aggressive or productive at all. Ingles has actually been decently productive off the bench until that last game. And then they do have Gary Harris back, so he should eat into the minutes of Ingles, of some of those guards. So he should see about 20-ish minutes. I guess you can land on him as a punt play. For Chicago, DeMar, the big news here is DeMar. He's questionable. If he's out, Vooch and Levine look very, very good here. If DeMar's back, I think they're all just strong secondary options. Kobe White, a fine play if you land on him. Obviously, Pat Williams wouldn't be a play if there is DeRozan. Even if DeRozan's out, Pat Williams, don't love the price tag for him. Caruso is a random dart throw, potential guy. Then Drummond, he's super productive, but it's really hard to trust that price tag for him. Moving on to Denver here versus the Pelicans. I mean, Jokic is Jokic. If a ton of value opens up, I don't mind paying up for Jokic because we know we're going to get from him probably 60 plus fantasy points with the range to go for 100 plus. Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, both strong mid-range options. Not much else to say about them. They'll pick up the slack offensively. Reggie Jackson's minutes have actually been ticking up, so I do have a good amount of interest in him here. Before, he was only seeing low to mid-20s minutes with no Jamal Murray. The past 2 or 3, he's seen close to 30 minutes. So good amount of interest in Reggie Jackson right now against the Pelicans. Obviously, really like him there. I'm going to throw him in the line for now. And then getting on down here to these cheaper guys, KCP, Brown, Braun, Najee. they're all fine plays, but no real need to get some as of right now. On to the Pelicans here. CJ still out, so Zion and Brandon Ingram will lead this team. Actually, excuse me. I actually really like the price tag on Zion right now. Dropping minutes haven't been great. They've been involved in some blowouts, but if it's a close game, he should see close to 38 minutes. And definitely has double upside. So I like Zion. He's been very quiet this season, but we know the upside with him is massive. J Val, they'll probably need him against Jokic. It's just one of those things. His minutes are all over the board, so it's really hard to trust. But I do think he should see hopefully close to 25, if not 30, because they do need him guarding Jokic. Even though J Val is not the best and most nimble defender, they will need his size against Jokic. But there's foul trouble risk there, so that's the trade off. But I do like taking a shot on J Val if you're making multiple lineups. Herb Jones, kind of a fine play there. Definitely has upside there with the steals. Been going crazy with the steals recently. Hawkins coming off a really good game there. He's just very score independent, so I don't love the price tag there. Daniels got the start. I think it's a strong play there if he gets to start again. He's been a little bit more aggressive recently as well. Guy that can stuff the stat sheet. So I do have interest in him there if he does get to start again. But Alvarado is back, but it looks like he should be out. So don't have to worry about that. I will mention Najee Marshall played 21 minutes, so it looks like he's not going to be on a minutes limit. Very, very productive guy here and was decently aggressive. 9 shots there off the bench, 21 minutes. So game did blow out, so he probably got a few extra minutes here, but a very, very productive guy. So keep an eye out on this because if the starting five does not do well, Najee Marshall could be a great play here off the bench, who's kind of one of those random spark plug guys that they can throw in and can go for a monster game. I will say that he's had some monster games in the past. Phoenix, Beal is I think doubtful. Yeah, so it should be the Durant and Booker show. Both look like fantastic spin ups. If you're going to get to one, I'd rather get to Booker just because his ceiling's been massive. He's been very, very productive, every single stats. Durant, a little bit more score independent, but obviously can still get there. I just feel a little bit safer with Booker, but they're both great plays here against Utah. Fantastic game environment. The rest of the team, just more secondary options if you land on them, sure, but no one really, really stands out to me. On the Utah side here, Lowry, always going to be your contrarian, solid spin up option who's going to be super low owned. Clarkson, a little bit too pricey for me, but he's been decent. Collins, solid, price tag for him. Kessler's out. So obviously, once again, they'll start these three at the top alongside, Kante George. Solid play there. In the mid range, another solid point guard play at 5K alongside Dyson Daniels and Reggie Jackson. And then they will also start those 1, 2, 3, 4. Who else did they start? I think it was Horton Tucker or Abaji. I think it was Abaji. I don't think there's a need to get to him. Sexton off the bench. One of those guys you land on, sure. If he gets hot, they can extend him, but don't love it. Not much love there for the kind of the secondary guys for me on Utah. Lakers, obviously the huge news here is LeBron, if he's good to go. It looks like he should be. He's questionable. I'm going to be super pissed off if LeBron doesn't play tomorrow, and it's like one of those things where I played Anthony Davis the last slate. LeBron finally got ruled in, so it kind of ruined me. And then, of course, Anthony Davis had his worst game of the season. But if the opposite happens where, LeBron gets ruled out, Anthony Davis goes crazy, I'm just going to be so annoyed. But yeah, I think they both should be good to go. They're both, solid contrarian options. Not much else to like here for this team. Everyone's kind of priced about right. Moving on to Portland. Brogdon's still out, so this team will still be led by Sharp and Mays here. Yeah, not really getting them at discounts. I think they're fine. Obviously not the best matchup against the Lakers. But they're there. Aiden, a decent contrarian option, but not the best matchup going against AD. So yeah, not much to like here. I do like some of the value. Kamara should start. Jabari Walker's getting some solid minutes off the bench there. But yeah, not a lot to like for Portland. And then the Rockets have actually been really, really good so far this season. Sengun, always a really, really strong player here in the mid-range, has huge upside. Van Fleet, kind of the same thing. The minutes have been insane the past 2 games there. If it's a close game, Van Fleet should play huge minutes. So good amount of interest in those two at the top. Jalen Green, priced about right for me. Very score-independent guard. Jabari Smith, it's just one of those things. He's not seeing a ton of shots right now, so I don't have interest in him. Brooks is Brooks. Never going to land on him, even if half the team is out. Tari Eason, kind of like a Najee Marshall. They're very, very, very productive there off the bench, but not seeing a ton of minutes right now. But still, I think it's a solid dart throw play. And then we'll mix in, some Tate and, Jeff Green, but nothing too crazy here. But some cheap options if you want to land on them. And then for the Clippers, Paul George has the huge game last game. 2 solid games in a row for him. So it looks like he's probably the safest alongside Kawhi. And I don't have much interest in Westbrook and Harden. Sure, you can take shots on them, but it's really I'd rather get to just one of the two stars here, and that's really it. And yeah, that's the slate breakdown for me today, guys. Obviously, as you guys can see, a ton of news. So it's really hard to fill out the rest of this lineup just because there's just so many different ways we can go with the news. So I'm just gonna leave it at this for now, and I will have my updated. I will make updated core plays on my Twitter as well as my Patreon. Patreon will get it first, and I'll keep updating it as we get the news. But I'll do a original. I'll just do a first look update for Twitter. So make sure to follow me down below. Hit that like button. I'll see you guys next video. Peace.